So Critias the Younger then presented the story in the Socratic Forum, and let's see who else was there: Timaeus, Critias, Plato, and Socrates, of course.
When you say Socratic Forum,
Socrates.
Yeah. Okay, so that's quite literally like in his forum itself.
I travel a lot, but there's always these other places I'm going. Like I just got back from the Azores.
How was that?
That was awesome. A couple of weeks out there in the mid-Atlantic, looking for any remains I could find of Atlantis.
Oh, you were looking for Atlantis and the Azores. That's a great way to start this off. What's the evidence there?
Oh, well, you got to go back to the source. Plato. You've heard of Plato, right?
Oh, yeah.
Considered to be the greatest metaphysician of Western civilization, right? So he wrote two dialogues, Timaeus and Critias, and that's where pretty much 97.5% of all the info we have on Atlantis comes from those two dialogues of Plato. And I've made a pretty thorough study of his work, particularly focused on that, for decades now. And what I decided to do, let me put some context here. If you go back to there was like a 19th century Atlantean revival based upon the work of Ignatius Donnelly, who was a congressman from Minnesota, who ran for Congress, won his seat in Congress, went to Washington, but his primary motive was so that he could go there and do research in the Library of Congress. So he spent a lot of time in the Library of Congress and did a lot of research, and he came back and he wrote two books on Atlantis. Atlantis, the Antediluvian World, I think it was called, and the other one was Ragnarok, the Age of Fire and Gravel. So in the first one, he talks about evidence that could be consistent with the potential island civilization in the middle of the Atlantic, which is kind of where Plato pretty much put it, in fact, very explicitly put it in the mid-Atlantic. And that sort of triggered a revival of interest in Atlantis that a lot of people sort of picked up on it. And there was a lot of books written on the subject over the next, say, until the 1970s. And most of them followed Plato's description, which very explicitly placed it in the mid-Atlantic, right? So then in the 1970s, we had some geologists weigh in, and there was a book published, I think it was 1977, called Atlantis, Fact or Fiction. And in that book, you had a group of geologists basically laying out why Plato would have been wrong. It couldn't have been there in the mid-Atlantic because what we knew about the Atlantic Ocean excluded any possibility of there being a landmass there of any substantial size, and declared definitively that Atlantis, whether it was fact or fiction, it would have been fiction, and that he meant it merely as a socio-political allegory for his concept of what the ideal civilization would have been, and why an ideal civilization would fall into decline. It was primarily because they became imperialistic, and he describes how they came in from the Atlantic and invaded the region of the Mediterranean Sea, and tried to subjugate all of the peoples living in cultures inside the Mediterranean. And then what I call the Proto-Athenians, because we're talking about a period of time that was about 11,600 years ago. Plato is very explicit about the date that he gives. And
which correlates, interesting, with a certain time period.
Absolutely, it does. And we can circle back to that if you want. But
hey guys, 3 quick things. Number 1, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. It's a huge, huge help. Number 2, if you'd like to join my Patreon for early uncensored releases of the full episodes, you can join via the link in my description or in the pinned comment below. And number 3, if you'd like to join my clipping community for a chance to make content from the show and make money, you can join via the Discord link in my description below.
So he describes how the forerunners of the Athenians, Plato is, he's explicating on what the ancient Egyptian priests told Solon, who was an Athenian poet, lawgiver, philosopher, etc., who went on a self-imposed, he left Athens on he banished himself from Atlantis. From Athens. Thank you. And went to Egypt, and while in Egypt, he was discoursing with the elderly priests there, telling about all the things that they knew in Greece at the time. And one of the elderly priests said, "You Hellenes, you Greeks, are really just like children. You don't know about all of the stuff that really went down. For example, you know only about one flood. We know about at least 3 great floods." And he went on and then proceeded to narrate the story of Atlantis to Solon. And Solon came back then to Athens and then narrated the story to, I believe it was his nephew, who then passed it down to his son. Let's see, it was Dropidas. And then it ended up Critias the elder, then Critias the younger. And it was Critias the younger who then narrated the story in the Socratic forum that Plato describes, right? John?
Joey.
Joe.
Yeah.
Okay, Joe is nodding his head. So Joe obviously knows about this.
Yeah,
right?
he knows what's up. This is a cultured man over here.
That's, that makes me suspicious, because whenever because I mean, he could be a reincarnated Atlantean. Have you ever looked at his background?
It's funny. There's nothing known about Joseph D. Philippus before the year 2019.
Really?
And that's very strange to me. I don't know if he's a time traveler. I'm not ruling it out, but he's keeping himself off camera right now too. He's not putting his camera on. I don't like it.
Okay, I get it. Okay, well, we'll have to look into that. So, anyhow, so Critias the Younger then presented the story in the Socratic forum, and let's see who else was there: Timaeus, Critias, Plato, and Socrates, of course.
When you say Socratic forum,
Socrates.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So that's quite literally like in his forum itself, or
yes.
is that like a name for a type of forum they would have?
Well, I think it could be used now as a type of forum,
okay.
but it obviously comes from Socrates himself, and Socrates was there, kind of leading the whole discussion. See. Anyhow, so then back to what happened. The development in the 1970s was that. The geologists weighed in and said, the geology just doesn't work here. So the conclusion was, the title of the book, Atlantis, Fact or Fiction. The conclusion was it's fiction, that Plato pretty much made it up, again, allegorically. But then you had other people looking at it and said, so let's consider that Atlantis might have been somewhere else than where Plato seems to place it, right? So the prime candidate was the island of Santorini that had there was a volcano. Now let me see, was it Terra the volcano, Santorini the island? I think that was it. I think it was Santorini was the island. The name of the volcano was Terra, Thera. If Joe is looking it up. And it erupted, would have been 900 years before Plato's time, I believe, which would have put it about 1,000 BC.
1600 BC, Joe, you said?
What was it?
1600 BC.
Okay, so it was 900 years before Solon's time.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Solon was 600 BC.
So they thought Atlantis could have been in Santorini. I mean, Santorini's like not off the beaten path. I mean, it's like right there.
Right there. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is right there. But that has been the primary candidate. But to make it work, then you have to say, okay, well, Plato didn't really mean outside the Pillars of Hercules, which is the Straits of Gibraltar, which separates the Mediterranean from the Atlantic. It wasn't really there. It was somewhere else, and they had to look around, and they said, okay, maybe these 2 rocks here were what he meant, the Pillars of Hercules. And Plato was off by an order of magnitude. He got confused, and instead of 900 years, it was 9,000 years. Okay, so that became the prime candidate. But then over the next few decades after that, I mean, you see it being proposed all over the place. Turkey, even Antarctica, Britain. I mean, there was a list of at least a dozen places that, in each author and researcher had their own own explanation for why this place would have been Atlantis or could have been Atlantis.
What was like the explanation for whichever author wrote that it could have been in Britain? Like what
could have been what?
Did you say Britain was one of them?
Yeah, actually the Celtic Shelf, which is an area off the coast of Britain that is now drowned under the ocean. Well, because remember, we're talking, when we're going back 12,000 years or
Right.
longer, we're in the middle of an ice age.
Yes.
And that ice age, there was more ice, more than double the amount of glacial ice on the world than there is today.
This is when we're switching from like Pleistocene to Holocene?
That's right.
Okay.
Good. The man has been doing his homework.
Well, don't give me too much credit because I always forget. Like that's like the scientific term for
Yes.
it because it's a literal change in actual, say, geology of the Earth
It
as
was
far
a-
as what we can see.
It was an extreme climatical change that occurred. And the thing that defined it was the Younger Dryas, which you've heard of.
Oh, yeah. I've heard you talk about that a lot.
Yeah, so the Younger Dryas was this climate catastrophe. It lasted about 1,300 years. It started just a little bit this side of 12,900 years ago, and it was over suddenly. We're actually going to look at some graphs of this in a bit. It was over suddenly at 11,600 years ago. And one of the things that happened at the very end of the Younger Dryas was there was a massive melting event. And that, of course, then introduced a huge volume of meltwater into the global oceans, which caused an accelerated sea level rise. So if you look up meltwater pulse 1b, Joe, meltwater pulse 1b, I think you'll see that it's dated to right at 11,600 years ago, give or take, maybe a century.
And by the way, for everyone else out there, Randall has the HDMI today, so we're going to be looking through a lot of PowerPoints that he has. So if you don't see Joe pulling up things, that's why. We have it in there, so there'll be plenty of information coming out.
Cool, yeah.
For you, at least, that I'll be able to pull.
Oh, cool. All right, so we'll at least have it in here. But what did we get anything on that?
Yeah, so
Perfect. So Meltwater Pulse 1b, an episode of rapid post-glacial sea level rise, hypothesized to have occurred between approximately 1100 or 11,500 and 11,200 years ago at the end of the Younger Dryas period.
I think the refined dates that I've been looking at put it closer to 11.5.
Okay.
But
But
it
it
did-
lasts
it-
300 years, give or take?
But what happened was you had this rapid pulse, and then it didn't just diminish all at once.
Yeah.
So it sort of declined over a period of several centuries.
Got it.
But it looks like the initial pulse of meltwater was very rapid. And so this is at 11,600. So that works out to be precisely Plato's date that he gives in his dialogues multiple times, not just once. So if he made a mistake, he made it multiple times. And, the Egyptian priests are very explicit and say, yes, we preserved this story in our sacred registers from 8,000 and 9,000 years ago, right? So anyways, I look at that and I go, okay, so Plato places the subsidence of Atlantis 11,600 years ago, which is within a few decades of a massive meltwater pulse,
Right.
when sea level would have been rapidly rising. Now, to get into a little geophysics here, when you have surface loading, mass loading, whether it's on the oceans or on the continents, the crust of the Earth is not perfectly rigid. It gives. In the same way we're sitting on these cushioned chairs. I made this analogy for Rogan one time. I said, right now, if you were to try to understand what isostatic depression is, this is the term for this. Everybody knows about continental drift, which is lateral movement. Less known is isostatic, which is vertical movement. And I said, right now, Joe, you're sitting on a cushioned chair, and your ass is causing isostatic depression. And I think he got that. I
Yeah.
think he understood that. Then using
I almost feel the earth moving right now on my ass a little bit. That's good. Thank you guys for watching the episode. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and smash that like button on the video. They're both a huge, huge help. And if you would like to follow me on Instagram and X, those links are in my description below.